F1 Manager 22 has been thrilling and frustrating us for well over a month now, and we've been using that time to reflect on both the good things and the bad things about the game. We here at RacingGames believe we have sunk enough hours into the game now to have a pretty good list of both the good and bad sides, and so today we'll be starting off with everything we think could use some work still. I'm Mark from RacingGames, and here's everything bad about F1 Manager 22. Ah yes, the crashes, or lack of crashes, or lack of DNFs due to crashes. This is actually a pretty stretched out point. Coming off the back of the Singapore Grand Prix, where we saw plenty of race-ending crashes, you'd think you'd have enough experience to be able to tell if a crash has caused terminal damage or not. Well, if you're playing F1 Manager 22, your guess is as good as ours. Many times we here at RacingGames have seen a car going headfirst into the barriers at speed, only to then continue racing with next to no damage. Now yes, we have seen several DNFs during our playthrough so far, but still nowhere near as many as there should have been. In fact, the only time the game guarantees a DNF is when one of your drivers crashes, and especially when they crash into your teammate. I'm looking at you, Alex. In one of our most recent streams, Carlos Sainz spun and crashed into the barrier. Not only did he not DNF, he was also able to spin his car back around and only lose 4 or so seconds doing so. Oh, and the damage he sustained was minimal at best. Now if my drivers could do this, I'd be a very happy team principal. But we think what this actually demonstrates is the race engine's flaws when simulating crashes, as clearly a driver spinning out like that would not be able to recover so quickly. The damage models on the cars themselves could also do with some work before F1 Manager 23. Yes, the race engine is only a representation as to what's happening on track, but it would still be cool to see the actual damage the cars have taken, instead of just a missing front wing. Different crash animations would also be nice. Seeing the same crash 4 separate times in Belgium did get a little tiresome after the second or third time. Oh, and one final thing, it would also be nice if the drivers didn't appear to drive through barriers during a race too. Okay, rant about crashes over, let's move on. Before we move on, have you subscribed to RacingGames yet? Just one click and you're on the RacingGames grid. Oh, and hit that notification bell too so you never miss an upload. Alright, on with the video. F1 22 has sprint races, albeit sprint races where you can't actually change which tracks they take place on throughout your career mode, but it does at least have sprint races. F1 Manager 22 does not have sprint races. We've already covered this in our 3 things missing from F1 Manager video, but once again we do want to say just how much we miss them not being in the game. Formula 1 recently announced that 6 sprint races will be on the calendar in 2023, meaning a quarter of the calendar will involve sprints. This just makes us pine for sprint races in F1 Manager even more, as it adds a whole new element to the race weekend. We know not everyone likes the sprint race format, but we here at RacingGames are always up for more on-track action during a race weekend. When managing a team at the back of the grid, sprint races will give you a second chance to make up some places across the weekend, possibly even resulting in a points finish. Instead, we're left to wonder what might have been as we leave Imola, the Red Bull Ring and Interlagos to head to the next race. There's every possibility sprint races will be included in next year's release, but it's still a real shame in our eyes that they weren't able to be included this year for the series' debut. There's also the matter of safety cars. Again, when you're Williams, chances are you will be lapped during a race. Now you'd think a safety car would be the perfect way to get back into your actual position, right? Wrong. You see, in F1 Manager 22, lapped cars are not allowed to unlap themselves during a safety car. So not only do you not get to rejoin the safety car train, you also end up a full minute or so behind the car in front if the safety car catches you at a bad time. If you want to hear the rest of our points on sprint races and safety cars, be sure to check out our video on 3 things missing from F1 Manager 22. For now though, let's move on. So this is a complaint that could cover a number of sports management games, but let's just keep it focused for now. F1 Manager 22 relies too heavily on numbers. In a race, if the tyres drop below 50%, your driver loses some speed. If they drop below 30%, your driver pretty much loses all of their speed. For a game, that's understandable, but that's not really how F1 works. Alex Albon managed all but one lap on a single set of tyres in Australia this year, only pitting so as to not get penalised. This means he went an incredible 57 laps on the same set of hards before switching to mediums for the final lap. Lance Stroll took advantage of a virtual safety car in the same race to switch compounds, only to pit again a lap later to switch back to his original compound, which he then went on to finish the race with. F1 Manager 22 just doesn't let you take risks like this. Sure, there's less of a strategy meta since the 1.8 update, but it still feels as though the game is limiting when it comes to race strategy. Outsmarting the AI is one of the only ways to score points when you're managing a backmarker like Williams or Haas, but with few options as to how to do that, we just end up back at the back by the time the checkered flag drops. The fact is, for a game that wants to replicate the world of F1 as closely as possible, F1 Manager has fallen into the typical management game numbers trap. The balance is always between making the game realistic, whilst also keeping it accessible for new players. The solution to this is nearly always numbers and percentages. By showing tyre degradation as a percentage, players unfamiliar to F1 can still see when it's time to make a pit stop. The downside to this though is races become too formulaic. Instead of inventing crazy strategies designed to take the big risks, players instead look at when the tyres are due to fall off the cliff. This results in every race being rinse and repeat. Run the tyres until they reach 30%, switch tyres, run until 30%, you get the idea. Tracks in F1 Manager do have an abrasive value that affects how quickly tyres degrade, but again, it's the same for everyone, both you and the AI. Considering how car setups work in the game, we think a similar system for tyres would also work well. Instead of waiting for the number to hit 30%, just wait for Hamilton to tell Bono his tyres are dead. Then of course leave him out for an extra 10 laps or so for the inevitable second life he always gets before finally pitting him. Relying on individual drivers to tell you when they need a tyre change would be a better opportunity to take strategy risks, and considering it would work the same way as setups, it would be easy for new players to pick up too. Although saying that, it would also be nice if the percentages in setups were also scrapped in favour of a good, great and optimum style feedback, much like the individual categories within the setup, but that might be a conversation for another time. We were going to use this numbers point to talk about fuel consumption as well, but we're hoping update 1.9 has fixed this issue, so for now, we'll leave it there. Don't get us wrong, F1 Manager is still an incredibly fun and challenging game to play, but we feel these issues are holding it back from reaching its true potential. Some of these will be fixed in F1 Manager 23, at least we hope they will, whereas others could be patched out this year if the demand is high enough. There are plenty of other little issues here and there as well that could make the game better if fixed, so feel free to leave your suggestions down below too. Oh, and be sure to check in later this week to find out everything we think is great about F1 Manager 22. For now though, thanks for watching. I've been Mark from RacingGames, please like and subscribe for all things F1 Manager, and now I'm off to try and get all these numbers out of my head. Every time I close my eyes now, all I see is 30%.